Such fear and fanciful notions took possession of the living that almost all of them adopted the same cruel policy, which was entirely to avoid the sick and everything belonging to them. By so doing, each one thought he would secure his own safety.
Hello, I'm Giovanni Boccaccio, and I'm a survivor of the Black Death, and I will be telling you guys about my experiences throughout this plague. The Black Death came about during the 14th century. There were many causes and effects of the plague. People didn't know who was to blame, and everybody had different ways of coping with it. There were many causes of the Black Death. One of the causes was that people believed it originated in the Himalayan region in about 1250, and there was a migration of rats from their native region in the Himalayas. They left their native region because of lack of food. After the rats had migrated, there was a climate change. The migration of the rats caused them to come into contact with humans, which then caused the humans to be exposed to the disease. Studies show that the bacterium that caused the plague is Yersinia pestis. Because of the many causes of the Black Death, there were multiple effects of it also. One of the effects was that 1/3 to 1/2 of the population was killed during the Black Death era. Rise in anti-Semitism also was an effect of the Black Death. There was a decline in trade, labor shortages, and decreased demand of food. Also, there was growth in the cities, which was a big effect of the Black Death, which was a big effect while the Black Death was going on. There was a deadline of serfdom, and also there was a decline of serfdom, and also there was an influence of the church. Nobody really knew who was to blame for the coming about of the plague. Multiple people thought God was punishing them. Others blamed Jews because during this time Jews got blamed for anything and everything. People didn't know who was to blame, so they would just blame it on themselves, and others blamed the rats that had supposedly started it all. Nobody really knew how to cope with the pestilence, so people just got up and left and abandoned their families like it was no big deal. Other people had taken the obsession. Nobody really knew how to cope with the pestilence, so people just got up and left and abandoned their families. Other people had taken an obsession in things to try to keep their mind off the fact that everybody was going to die eventually. People became intoxicated to cope with the death being all around them. Women knew that death was upon them, so they decided to become promiscuous. While some people were getting intoxicated or abandoned their families, others would just act like there was nothing and cover themselves in posy and just go about their day. Others stayed inside or left the town and went to villas. The main religion during this era was Christianity, so many people decided to go to church and pray, thinking that would help them. And others beat themselves for 30 days to suffer, just like Jesus did. And in conclusion, the Black Death was a very devastating time in Europe during the 14th century. People didn't know how to cope with it or what to think. During this time period, millions of people died, and there was so much despair and heartache. People didn't know who was to blame or how this plague even came about. All they knew that people were dying, and they were dying fast. Like Robert Lowell said, "This is death, to die and know it. This is the Black Widow death."
The death started in Asia. People didn't know why people were getting sick. Other people died. We didn't know what caused it. There's fights breaking out everywhere. People flew bodies, and everybody started to die. What's the cause? There were multiple rats in the seaports, and there were also lots of fleas buzzing around.
Goodbye, you young boy. You freak.
One way of coping with the death was being antisocial and staying inside and isolating yourself. Another way of coping with the Black Death was people drinking and being merry and happy and going about your death and the stench of it. People were surrounding themselves with posy and smelly goods because of the bad smell of dead people, and it helped them with coping. It's a good coping mechanism. All right, go. Another coping mechanism was people abandoned their families and ran away to big villas.
Bye, Mom and Dad.
You got it? All right. I'm Giovanni Boccaccio, and I am a survivor of the Black Death and an expert. And I will be reading you an essay. Right? Alright. Such fear and fanciful notions took possession of the living that almost all of them adopted the same cruel policy, which was entirely to avoid the sick and everything belonging to them. By doing so, each one thought he would secure his own safety. That is a quote. The Black Death came about during the 14th century. There were so many causes and effects of the plague. People didn't know who was to blame, and everybody had different ways of coping with it. There were so many... Why are you laughing?
Because you're laughing.
You keep looking at me and making weird gestures.
I'm telling you, turn it up a little bit.
Well, why don't you
Not
just say
yet. In the 1400s.
I can't do anything right with you people.
Just talk. Like, hello, my name is Giovanni.
Was I supposed to stop this?
Yeah, I thought
Yes.
you did.
Okay, stop.